Welcome to Break On Through, the podcast where we talk to up-and-coming musicians and people in the music industry. And I have Zack Deuce, or Zack Derby, whatever you want to go by today, man. How you doing?
It doesn't matter. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We already actually talked today. We had a lot of laughs, so this will be easy.
We have our weekly spaces now and then, which either you or Rick over at Piggly Dog starts, and Vinny from Chat Smash will jump in. But he's what, 5 hours behind us?
Yeah, he's 5. So it's usually by 7. It's usually midnight over there.
Yeah, so he's late, screaming at people and belligerent and
that's Vinny.
Yeah, that's just Vinny. Whenever he jumps in the spaces. But thank you for the invite, man. I love your podcast. It's a lot of fun. I love your content of it. We'll get into it, but I love what you do, trying to bring attention to up and coming bands or bands that have been out there, but they're undiscovered.
There's lots of them, and there's just a wealth of amazing talent, and it's just overflowing with people who, in my opinion, will tragically be passed by. And I think some of the best quality musicians that we have in the world are the ones that haven't been discovered yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been a dream of mine. If I could just help one of them, I'd feel pretty awesome about it. So that's what I'm trying to do. But your story is going to be a little different because you're not a musician. You work in the music industry in a different way.
I do. I do not have the talent to play any instrument. I just cannot do it.
Well, your beautiful voice is your instrument.
We'll go with that. I'm involved with the music industry because I work in radio, and I've been doing that since high school. I got not really roped into it, but I was looking for a winter job. I'd worked seasonally up in New Hampshire at a small family attraction for many years. And then during the winter, there was no income. And a friend of mine mentioned that this small radio station up in Littleton, WLTN, was looking for a board op. And a board op is someone who sits in front of the control board and will turn whatever audio on that you need to be on, which they needed a board up for Red Sox games. So I would put the game on. And, it's okay. You can be a little upset. So I would put the game on, play the commercials. And then we also had some local commentators and sports callers for the high school basketball game for boys and girls. And I was the guy in the studio doing that. And I enjoyed it. My real passion for radio came when I went to college, and I actually got to play around with music, and I got to play music and then do a little bit of talking. And that's where I said, this is a pretty cool job that isn't really a job. So if I don't ever have to have a job, I want to do this. And I was fortunate enough that after I graduated, I was able to get into radio, and I've been there for what year is it? 2020?
It's 2022.
I've been in radio since about 20 years, but professional full time I've been working in it for about 16, 17 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
It's been fun.
That's pretty cool to stay in something for that long, which came from something that you were just like, yeah, this sounds like fun. I don't think a lot of people have that opportunity in life to take what was fun and turn it into a career.
Not as many people, or at least not right away. I feel like I fell into it very easily, that just everything happened in the right order at the right time. And that's a lot of, at least where I am in radio, it's small market. The largest market, or the closest big market, is Boston and Portland, Maine, to a point. But the small market side of radio, I really enjoy. You're a person. You're not living by the your numbers of your ratings. There's areas where if you have a bad book or a bad rating once or twice, you're done. You're out because they can't afford it. And in our area, there are ratings for radio, but it goes far beyond that. A lot of it is the local connections and networking that you make. And it's a lot of fun. I don't have to sit in a cubicle or an office. I get to go out and do stuff.
Yeah, you don't have to sit pushing papers. So, That really is amazing. I'll be honest, I prefer a smaller radio station. I feel like you get a lot you get a lot more of the DJs that have a more likable personality, I guess, because like you said, they're not chasing a number. You get a real person on the other side of it. So I dig that. I think that's amazing. I've never met anybody else in radio, so this is cool. But I want to kind of go back to when you were young, like say before your summer interest that you had, and what was I ask everybody this, what was the first time that you kind of heard music and it wasn't maybe your parents' music, but it was the kind of music that you were like, this is my music?
The first time I ever came across music, well, my music is in a way my parents' music, and it is that way for a lot of people just because you're around it and you hear it. My mom loved the oldies, you know, like anything that you would hear on a golden oldies station. She was constantly playing that. My dad was more classic rock, big into Boston and the Beatles and Fleetwood Mac, and so that I would hear a lot of, and I enjoyed it. The first band really that I fell in love with probably was Boston, just because I did hear them a lot, but I just loved the sound of Boston, and you'd always hear, you know, the debut album. That's where all the highlights, the hits, really the best, in my opinion, the best songs for the band come from. So you hear that all the time. That was one of the first bands I think I fell in love with when I was a kid. For my music taste now, it's still classic rock, but I have skewed more into the metal or the harder stuff. And that was, funny enough, it was Metallica, but it was an album that you wouldn't think it would be. It was S&M.
Okay. That's actually not, that one's not too bad. That one's not bad.
S&M, if, you know, for those that don't know, it is symphony and Metallica. And many bands have tried it. Metallica was one of the very few bands that I think did it well.
Their music works with it, yeah, because it has a lot of like it's got the length to the music, but it's got the melodies to kind of build in an orchestra behind. So I mean, I was really worried you were going to say something crazy like Load.
I Load and Reload, like everything. Once you hit, you know, and you can hear how they were. There's like two bands I like to give examples of that have continued to exist and operate and be successful to a part. One is Metallica, and whether people love them or hate them, they're still successful because they have continued to change. The days of Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, incredible albums, incredible thrash album. James's voice sounds like garbage on Kill 'Em All. It sucks, but they're great albums. I love them. And then around Injustice, it starts to change, and Black Album, and it continues to mutate through Load and Reload all the way up to Saint Anger and Death Magnetic and beyond. And I can appreciate it for what it is, and I still enjoy it. But they have continued to change, and they're still successful. The other band is AC/DC, who has virtually almost never changed other than losing Bon Scott and picking up Brian. And if you listen to the first album and you listen to a later album, other than the singer, your mind quickly goes, is this new AC/DC? Or is this old AC/DC that I never heard? Brian singing, I don't know. And they are, for the most part, they are still successful. I can't tell you if any other rock band could be successful like either one of those with taking those same approaches, but I know those two it has both worked for them. And whether a band likes to change, you know, that's up to them. I may not follow them, and I may not continue to buy their music, but I still respect them for creating the music.
Nice. I find that because we're roughly around the same age, but I find a lot of the people that I have on here that are around our age, it always comes back to Metallica. Everybody finds Metallica and kind of runs with it. And Justice for All was the album that got me. I love that album. I still like Kill 'Em All, though. I don't know. I like the raw sound, I guess.
I like the sound of it. It is very, you can hear the limitations of it just because of the technology that's being used. And but I mean a lot of bands with their first albums aren't as polished as they could be now anyways. It really depends on who they had, who they used, when they even came out. If you're looking back into the 70s and 80s, who did you have access to? And did you know how to play and did you know how to sing? And a lot of bands continue to change and adapt over time, and a lot of times they get better, and most of them will hit a pinnacle of their best-selling album ever, and then they'll kind of peter off. And the two stations that I program, one is a light AC, adult contemporary, easy listening station. The other one is a classic rock station, which plays 70s, 80s, and maybe a little bit of 90s, but your main focus is 70s, 80s. And the reason why you don't really go into the 90s and 2000s that much, even with music by artists that you play, it's because radio is all nostalgia based, and it's what you grew up with and what you typically associate, whether it's your music or your parents' music, that you enjoy. And some people will enjoy the new music from the new band or your old band, but not everybody will. The die-hard fans with Metallica stopped at Black Album, because after Black Album with Load and Reload, that falls under hard rock. That isn't really even metal anymore, but most people won't like that. Or there's one or two songs, if that they like on it, just because it's fast.
I have a friend on Twitter who always likes to say, "Don't yuck my yum." But
I know that person.
But when it comes to Load and like Reload, I just can't like it for some reason.
And you don't have to. That's a great thing.
But I always try to make sure that, like, just because I don't like it, like, I wouldn't even normally say anything, because somebody out there's got to like it. But there's just something about, I think it was they all went to rehab or something. I don't know. They lost something that they had before it, and you're right. It's not metal anymore. They just morphed into something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're a fan of a certain kind of band, you kind of expect them to retain part of that edge of their music.
Something, yeah.
And they just, and I know now I'm way more forgiving with Metallica. They're getting a lot older and stuff, so I understand it now. They're just getting older. But I think it was a harsh time for Metallica fans of all ages when the change was made, and it was rough.
I think that also happens just with age. Another band I really enjoyed when they came out. You're a few years older than me, and when did you leave New England?
I went back and forth my whole life. So I left when I was 4, but I went back up and lived there for I don't know, 4 or 5 years when I was a little bit older, and then I moved back here, and then I moved back up when I was in my teens. I moved back. I probably moved back and forth like 8 times.
Okay. I don't remember if it was nationwide, but we had, do you remember Strawberries?
Oh, yes. Oh, I used to buy from Strawberries all the time.
So I remember it was, 99, 2000. My friends said, hey, you like hard rock, kind of alternative metal stuff. Have you ever heard of this band Linkin Park? And I went, no. I have no idea. And there was no CD stores where I grew up, way up in the Shire of New Hampshire. So, when next time I was down, and I think Tilton was my closest Strawberries, I went down there and I, found the album, and it was their first one, Hybrid Theory, and it was the new metal rap rock approach, which was different. I really enjoyed the album.
Great album.
And it's still one of the best debut albums that
it holds up very well.
It does.
Even though it's new metal, it is some of the most tolerable and great new metal that's probably ever been. That was an amazing album.
Mm-hmm. And I remember getting that and really going, wow, I really like this. And one of being different, and just it spoke to my interest.